And good evening,
I want people to think I'm working right now.
And good evening, everyone. ESS, Empire State Sports, proudly presents the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. Your host tonight, Joey Reno, Dave Bartlett, myself, Pete Gosselin. Our special guest, the Vice President of New York State High School. It's just too long to talk about because I'm really upset tonight, Russ, and you're going to hopefully straighten everything right out for us. But Russ Bartlett, Vice President of New York State High School.
New York State Public High School Athletic Association.
I'm all discombobulated tonight, Russ, and I hope you straighten us right out here tonight. I really do. So
I will do my best to recombobulate.
Okay, I appreciate it. Well, so I'm going to hit you right off. Just came out with the memo recently. NYSPHSAA came out with that. They said there's going to be no state championships this year for winter sports. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and tell us exactly what we're going to be looking for? Because I'm not very optimistic of this winter sports season, but I'm going to just put it in I'm going to let you talk about it because I'm so upset about everything.
Gotcha. I'm not less upset about it than you. I just have talked about it more, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess early last week, Monday, Tuesday, the officers of NYSPHSAA met, and we started talking about the fact that in the fall, when September, October reality is the numbers COVID-wise were really nil. And we kept waiting and thinking that maybe the governor was going to give us some sort of go ahead on high risk sports for the fall, like football in particular. And we got nothing. And we got nothing and got nothing. I think the closest thing we got to anything was they said that they would provide some sort of further guidance on high risk sports by the end of December. So for the winter sports season, basketball and wrestling and ice hockey fall into the high risk category, which is a designation that's set by the New York State Department of Health, by the way. The National Federation of High Schools, the national organization that we all fall under, has a set of guidelines that puts things in a particular risk category. That's not really perfectly in line with the one from New York State. But so the New York State Department of Health put the sports into specific risk categories based on a number of things. I guess I don't know all of them. A lot of it has to do with the amount of physical contact, but it also has to do with the space that they're played in. So indoor sports are always going to be a little bit higher risk than outdoor sports, et cetera, et cetera. So the numbers COVID-wise in the state are significantly more than they were in September, October. We kind of came to the conclusion on Monday that if we didn't get the go-ahead for anything for the fall sports season, well, the numbers look really good. Numbers hitting record highs on a daily basis probably didn't fare well for us getting any sort of go-ahead in the immediate future. So the number of moving parts that there are in having a state championship in basketball, for instance, would be back in Glens Falls this year. That would require the entire civic center, the staff, all of the people, printing of the programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's not a thing that really you can cancel at a moment's notice without everybody involved taking kind of a big financial hit. So we decided earlier this week we would seek some clarity from the governor's office about, are you going to give us anything? Are you going to give us any form of information to go on? Essentially, what we got was, no, we're not going to say anything. So we kind of had to make the decision at that point that there is really no viable way to have state championships for winter sports, particularly in high risk sports, but also in the low to moderate risk sports in the winter, which is essentially boys swimming, bowling, a couple other Nordic and downhill skiing, that people probably weren't going to be particularly comfortable sending their kids traveling where now you got to put them on a bus and they're going to stop and eat. They're going to stop at rest stops. They're going to stay in hotels, et cetera, et cetera. So after talking to a number of people, a number of superintendents across the state, we decided that the best thing to do, that's a terrible phrase to use because it's not good at all, but the most logical thing to do would be to pull the plug on winter sports championships. We had set a potential start date for winter sports first at November 30th. And I think the next time we pushed it ahead to January 4th. And we're really now, I think realistically, winter sports are just on hold. I don't anticipate getting any formal go-ahead from the governor's office, to be perfectly honest with you. The last piece of information they said out loud is that they're not inclined to give the go-ahead for high-risk winter sports as long as COVID infections and hospitalizations continue to increase, which they have done every day since they've said that. So you kind of reach a point where if we could get something moving, would it be meaningful? Do we have enough time to plan? You also look at the reality of, North Country wise, I think we're finally getting hit really kind of hard with the whole COVID thing in the time immediately following Thanksgiving. With Christmas and New Year coming, it's probably not realistic to think that it's going to curtail any time before mid to late January, get you to the beginning of February. So that's where we are. That's the rationale behind the decisions that honestly, they're garbage decisions to have to make. You sit in the room with people who've been coaches and teachers, and I'm the rookie of the group at 26 years. And at some point in there, almost everybody in the room is moved honestly on the verge of tears. And there's a lot of times where you can hear a pin drop because nobody can bring themselves to say anything. So.
Yeah, I know we've knocked this around, all of us have knocked this around all year long. We were at a place where we weren't optimistic at all about winter sports. And the more they pushed it back, you're trying to figure out timelines and going, how do you get all this in? And at some point, you're just gonna have to say, you're gonna have to throw the white flag and say, that's it. So my personal opinion, and I'm not you because you guys are the heartbeat of New York. I don't see it happening. So, but
No.
I
think one of the things that went into the decision in the fall, and that kind of went into this decision as well, is if you take the state championships out of the mix, it allows regions to approach their season based on whatever the circumstances are in their region. We in the North Country got, a full fall soccer season in. I say full, it was condensed to probably 14 games in 8 weeks. But, if you'd asked me in June if that was acceptable, I told you that was 14 more games I thought we were going to get.
right.
So
I
without
guess,
state championship, if there are places where the numbers say that, hey, you know what, you can do something, then individual sections, if they got the go ahead from the governor, could say, hey, you know what, January 15th, we got the go ahead from the governor in Western New York, purely hypothetical. Let's go ahead and start basketball then. And they could maybe get a 10 to 12 game season in. I don't see that happening in the North Country based on the way the trend is looking right now. But the other part of that is the proposed shift in seasons where there's a fall sports 1 and a fall sports 2 that potentially take place in March, April, May. Across the state, it's kind of a little bit ridiculous to consider that anybody north of the Thruway is going to play a fall sport outside starting on March 1st.
Right.
But, doing this sort of takes the statewide view out of it and says, do what you can do in your region. And if you can get an opportunity in for kids to do something, then do it.
Well, I know the other guys want to talk. I'll just point out one more thing. The only optimistic thing I can hear about this is that now that we've taken championships and just totally thrown them aside, it does allow for us to go a little bit further with winter sports if we're able to start them. You can schedule them further into March. That's the only optimistic thing I can think of, but we're not at that point yet. And I understand the COVID thing. I really do. I guess that's the only optimistic thing I'm seeing here, Russ.
Yeah. And there's the 11 sections across New York State. Every single one of those sections is in a different place in terms of how badly it's hitting their region. In retrospect, right now, for us, March, April, May, June, you look back at that now and you go, well, yeah, we closed schools because the governor said we had to, but why'd we do that? We could have gotten a spring sports season in. We got the majority of a fall sports season in. You take a look at sections 1, 9, 8, 11, New York City, Long Island, they had to shut everything down in March. Their numbers said that that's what they had to do. So as geographically diverse as New York State is, I think at this point, taking the state play out of it and saying whatever you can get done in your region gives a kid the best opportunity to maybe get something out of a year.
So who makes those calls for each region?
The executive director for each of the 11 sections, and that's generally a lengthy conversation with all of the athletic directors in each section. So section 10, for instance, Carl Normandin. In the fall, he met with the sport coordinators from soccer and cross country. What can we do? What's this going to look like? Long Island, and they have a little bit different structure going on because they're very based on county more than they are section. So their county government said, we're not playing fall sports in section Nassau, Suffolk County on Long Island. So they sort of got that decision taken out of their hands.
So Russ, Pete mentioned it. I guess as a winter sports coach, I was happy when I'm not happy, but I knew that we maybe increased our chances of any kind of season when they eliminated the winter sports championships. Because in my mind, if something were to change and around Martin Luther King Day, you could still get 2 months in.
Yep.
And finish at about the time when the state championships would normally be. I'm not going to give up hope because I'm almost thinking, with basketball, if they could just, 6 practices and let's go, you could probably start February 1st and still play 2 games a week, get like 12 games in.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to keep hoping, but obviously the numbers are sitting right there in front of us. If you're not watching the news or, you can't get away from it. So you see it increasing every day. It's hard to imagine that with Christmas and New Year's coming, the break, that it's going to get any better.
Yeah. And the thing that I read on Twitter and I read, the comment sections anytime one of these announcements is made against my better judgment, but and people are right. The spread and the infection rate in kids is exceptionally low. What I guess they fail to take into account is that, you know, there's at least 2, maybe 3 adult officials. And I don't know if you know our officials pool, a lot of them fall into the high risk category in terms of age. There's bus drivers, there's coaches, there's 10,000 moving parts to make a game happen. And the overwhelming majority of those things, of those moving parts, fall into a different risk pool than the kids who are playing the game. And that's the unfortunate part about it.
Well, and there's one number that it doesn't matter how you feel about this. But when hospitals are telling you we're out of room, then we have a problem. And this is where I totally understand where you guys are coming from.
Yeah.
Because everything that we do is leading to those hospitals getting fuller. And that's where the tough spot is. And then it gets compounded, Russ, and you know this already, when 45 other states in the union are just saying, let's go, and they're playing, and they're doing things. But it's such a tough spot, and all we can keep on doing is just crossing our fingers and hoping, but you got to have some common sense as well.
Yeah. And without trying to separate yourself from the political aspect of it and the opinion aspect of it, is really what we're doing is we're sitting here going, okay, if the governor gives us go ahead to play high risk winter sports, here's a set of guidelines that we think are going to keep everybody as safe as possible. And that's all we can do. There's a lot of talk about, colleges have been able to pull it off, and the NBA has been able to pull it off, but they also have the ability to put people in a bubble. And Division I basketball players that are playing basketball right now are not in classes. Everything is online. They're in their own bubble. And testing wise, average is about $85 to $90 per test per kid. That adds up really quick if you start talking about testing a team twice a week, and or additionally on game day. That becomes cost prohibitive almost immediately. So,
well, Russ, I was just looking. So last time we spoke was just before we started the fall season, our soccer season, cross country season that we had up here. And so I guess I want to ask, how did you think that all came off? I can give you my athletic director's point of view. I'm sure Dan, and you talk on a constant basis at Tupper Lake. But how did the state feel that it came off? Number one, all that mattered to me was that the kids were happy. But all the other stuff, how did it come off?
There wasn't a lot of other stuff really. It was honestly, I think every single one of us at the state level, I can speak for myself. I can speak pretty well for at least 3 of the other officers, saying that was the perspective we had, was if some kids get some games in that they didn't think they were going to get, that we didn't think they were going to get, that's a win. I think we all underestimated. We were all wrong about, kids are never going to wear masks. They're not going to, kids wore masks for entire soccer games. And after about the first 2 days, it was just a thing that they did. And I did not hear a single one of our kids complain about it. I even made a point of asking some as the season went on, like, what's the mask thing? How's that going? Like, I kind of forget about it at this point. So the kids were great about it. As with most of this, some of the adults are the problems, but we're all doing this because we're trying to get the kids the opportunity. And I think, there were statewide, there were a few sections that decided to completely forego the fall season. There were a few that tried it, and section 3 and 4, I think, probably had the worst go of it when they tried. Excuse me. There are a number of section 3 and 4 teams, soccer teams that only got 3 or 4 games in, and are now, they've, asked the state, could we get the waiver? We played in the fall, but if fall season 2 is available, can we resume our season then? So I think if you look back to July and August and say, what are the likelihood that we're going to get any soccer games in, any cross-country meets in? Not a whole lot of people had a whole lot of hope that any of it was going to happen. And, I think one of the cool things, there's a lot of post-COVID things that are going to happen in the world. And one of them is, I think every team that I know of did their senior night the first game of the season instead of the last game of the season. And every single parent I talked to was like, you know what, that's a really cool thing. I hope we keep doing that. So.
Yeah, and we were able to get those things in, and they were enjoyable. I can tell you some interesting, you playing games under the lights with a little bit of snow going, and then following that up a week later, we ended our season and playing that beginning in November. It was gorgeous up here. It was pushing 70 degrees for for a week. So, but really what it came down to is stress, and it was stressful, Russ. I mean, I had a team had to quarantine for 10 days, and then you're just flying, trying to figure out a schedule for them. It did get stressful. Some days you just didn't know. You were like, are we getting on the bus or not? We don't know. We didn't know until they were on the bus if we were going to play or not. So it was a stressful 6 to 7 weeks, but I'll say this again. The kids were happy. And when kids were starting asking about winter sports, I told them at the time, expect exactly this, fingers crossed. But if you can do this and do it in the gym and do it in the rink, expect this. And, now it's starting to look a little bleak. But if we did have a season, they're going to be, this is the no brainer. They're going to be wearing a mask. There's probably not going to be any fans. And, and there definitely now is not going to be any state championship. So, but they're fine with that. They just want to be able to be with their coach, be with their friends, and be able to compete a little bit. So,
I can tell you from my perspective on it for the fall sports. I live a block from the school here, and to just to be able to go down and watch kids play soccer, and you're right about the masks. They all had masks on. You look around, the parents that were there, they were all socially distanced. They're all wearing masks. I think, and the kids obviously, visibly were enjoying themselves, had a good time.
Yeah. I think that I had a conversation with 2 of our senior girls soccer players at the end of the season. And it was one of those moments that I'll never forget, because you come away from it going, we all underestimate kids a little bit because they had such a profound perspective on the whole thing. The first thing they said was, it was good to just be able to forget for a while. I always preach when I coach, like, when you cross the white line, you have an opportunity to come out here and forget the rest of the world for a bit. And they said it was great to have something to not have to think about, the garbage that's going on. And then the other thing that they said that really was super moving to me was, I think everybody was feeling like, you mentioned it, Joe, are we getting on the bus today or not? Every single time they played, they thought, this might be it. Like, this might be our last game. And the seniors in particular said it was so much easier to just go out on the field and just let it all loose every single time, because you never knew whether it was going to be the last game you played or not. So that was, you come away from those and you go, you nailed it, kid.
Yeah, you found out you found out real quick to how much the kids and the athletes are resilient. They'll do just about anything just to, like you said, get out there. My nephew was playing for Salmon River, and they couldn't wait to get out there. They were willing to do absolutely anything to get out on the field, and they had, like you said, they got through it, and so now we're onward to winter sports. So I'm kind of confused about what happens in spring now. I mean, if we do get through all this, Russ, and you have the fall too, and now you get the interesting thing is going to be your star athletes that play 3 sports. They got to pick something. So now you got to wonder, you know, and I'm sure that's across your table also down there.
Yeah. And the thing about the whole thing that's concerned me a little bit is, in an effort to, you know, none of us wants to pull the plug. None of us wants to say to a group of kids, any sport, like, nope, not going to happen. We want to give them some sort of, we want to have hope. We want to look down the road and say maybe this. So I think that was the reasoning behind the fall sports 1, fall sports 2. Can we condense a season? If things turn and we have, you know, the ability to play, I think one of the things we all got to keep in mind is, at this point, our spring athletes already lost an entire season. They lost the spring 2019 season. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, you know, a priority for us statewide should be, let's preserve what we can for them, because, you know, fair is fair, I guess. I know that I would love to have an opportunity to play basketball into April, or, you know, whatever happens. But let's not forget, you know, senior athletes in a spring season this year already lost 1 season. So that's where we should be focused.
Yeah, one thing I did talk to a lot of people that don't even have kids in sports, and of course we're all sport nuts, us sport nuts, so we get it. But people that don't follow sports as much have realized during this pandemic and shutdowns or whatever, and after school curricular activities, how much sports really played a huge part of a kid's school. A lot of them never knew it was that big of a deal until this shut down, and now we're finding out that it really impacts a lot of things. So I feel for the kids. Like you said, they lost last spring. I would hope somebody would make the right decision this year, and I hate to say it, I'm going to be the bad guy here. I don't think we should have the fall sports in the spring, and we should just focus on the spring sports if we're allowed to, because they already lost theirs last year. That's just my opinion. So maybe I'm wrong.
The other thing, it's worth mentioning, you talked about the perspective. You know, the 4 of us, for instance, we live, eat, sleep, breathe sports. You get a room full of athletic directors, live, eat, sleep, breathe sports. Obviously, everybody at the state level in NYSPHSAA is all about it. You start asking questions about what's possible and what people are able and willing to do to other superintendents in particular around the state. And it's alarming how quickly you realize perspective matters, you know, because we want it to happen. We understand how important it is. A superintendent from the Buffalo area goes, yeah, I'm already looking at 20% of my budget being cut. Our numbers are going up drastically every day. So not only am I not sure I can afford the bus that I'm putting kids on, I'm also not sure how many of them are coming back with or without COVID. And that's you listen to that perspective and you go, yeah, I see where you're coming from. You know? So the perspective that people have on the whole thing is vastly different depending on what your background is.
Well, it's
Well,
effective. Go ahead, Joe, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and Russ, I mean, not only, you're vice president in NYSPHSAA, but you're superintendent of schools. So you're playing, yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess where I was going to go with this is we all love sports. I'm going to be one of the first ones to say, I feel for the kid that doesn't play sports, but is involved in the other extracurricular activities that a school has to offer. The school play. This is the time of year we should be moving games because we got a school Christmas musical tonight, which
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
kids that live for that. That is they love music and they're unable. We're not, and I don't hear the arguments for them as much as, we do for sports. And I feel for those kids as well.
Every student athlete's got 24 advocates for them at every level, from local right on through the state. And as far as I know, I don't hear the advocate for, the parent or the kids who are in a musical or in band or whatever else isn't happening. And you talk about the mental health and well-being of kids. So much of it is tied to what happens outside of a classroom from a school perspective. And that's a huge worry.
And I guess one other thing, but sorry, Pete, but the one other thing just to cap that off too is, I'm assuming Tupper Lake, Salmon River, Indian Lake, Old Forge, all those schools, St. Lawrence Central, our school day ends at 2:30 here. This school is still a bustling community for probably 4 more hours on a normal, when things are normal, with either the fitness center for the public or people walking our halls for conditioning or meetings or anything that the school is used for. We shut down at 2:30 every day now. We're gone. It's I'm in here by myself. It's a Sunday night, but this is how it feels every day at 2:30 now in our school. And that's some of the things that outside of sports that I don't think people are realizing, that schools are more important, even with sports, all the other things that has to offer for your whole community.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say though, Joe, is this impacts more than just the students. Like you said, it impacts the community, it impacts the businesses that, love to see, they get the headache of the buses pulling in, but they make a little money. The restaurants that you're stopping at, it impacts a lot of people. So it's, you don't realize all that until it's not there. So, I'm sure people are not second guessing, but are thinking that now. It's like, man, this is affecting a lot more people than we think. And then we're just talking from the sports aspect, and like I said, the after school, that was an exit point there, Joey. It's this time of year is the Christmas, Christmas parties, Christmas musicals, the choirs are singing in the schools. Everything's shut down, so it's affecting a lot of people. So I just sit here and shake my head and wonder what's next.
Yeah. The thing that's hard to remember, it's not hard to remember, it's hard to, you talk about perspective, and this is year 27 at Tupper Lake for me, and coaches that have coached forever, and you go, we're going to get through this, and next season will probably be okay, and it will, but I'm sure every single one of us has a distinct set of memories from our senior year of whatever sport we were playing that 50 years later you're still dragging around with you, and those just aren't there. And it's a super hard thing to wrap your head around, because we still have to plan for, okay, where are next year's state basketball champions? We got to get the hotels, we got to make sure everything, and you keep moving forward to plan for next year with the assumption it's going to be better, it's going to be okay. But it does absolutely crush a kid who loses 1 year. That's 1 year out of 4. not 1 year out of the 30 that I can remember. It's 25% of their experience. So that's a tough thing.
No, I agree with that, because I know all of us talk about the good old days when we had our golden years in high school, and now, yeah, you're right. You feel bad for the seniors that have lost a year. We felt bad for the seniors that lost last spring, and now it looks like it might happen again. So you got to feel for these kids, that they're not going to have those memories in the golden years that we do. So it's very disappointing. I didn't bring you on to get everybody depressed, Russ. We just wanted to hear from the horse's mouth about our sports. And
Well, you saying we're in our golden years? That's the depressing part.
Well, we're over that 50.
You, Dave, golden years.
Yeah. Okay.
Joey and I, we're like the tail end of our silver years.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know what I was talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah. Yeah, we're all looking for that natural hair growing miracle. But anyway.
And I also have to say, for the record, that in terms of my senior year, the good old days and the great things, probably the most memorable thing I have is sitting on a bench watching Joey play for another team, draining 20-foot jump shots in an era where we didn't have 3-pointers. So I think we ended up 3-13 on the season, my senior year. So it was, all I had was watching other people play.
I think we were 2-12, but our 2 wins were against you.
Yeah, you had to bring that up.
Remember how I signed on here, Joe?
Yeah.
Well, Russ, it's Sunday night. We don't want to take too much of your time. We really appreciate you coming on and picking your brain.
So this is 3 times. I think that officially qualifies me as a regular guest.
Oh, yeah, and we're going to have you on again. You know that. So
I'll be sending you a hat.
Okay, perfect.
that's right.
I'll get you a koozie.
I can't wait to get to a period of time where you have nothing to talk to me about.
I don't know about that, but we're still going to pick your brain. But we thank you very much for coming on, Russ.
Sure.
That's going to be
Thank you, Russ.
That's going to be it for tonight, folks, on ESS, Empire State Sports, the Wise Guy Sports Talk Show. I want to thank you from Joey Rio, Dave Bartlett, myself, and our special guest, the Vice President of New York State Public High School Athletic Association, Russ Bartlett. Thanks a lot, Russ.
Got it.
All right. Good night,
Thanks, guys.
everybody.